The Rehabilitation Act of 1973, Section 504 by Kayla Fierro and Miroslava passed. This law is very important for all higher education institutions inside here in the United States because this law protects people with disabilities. In this case, students with disabilities. Kayla and I investigate more about this law and how it's worked for students with disabilities. I explain more in this presentation. The background of the law. In the 90s, many people in the United States, especially black people, work together to be treated fairly. They want the same rights as everyone else. People with in that time, people with disabilities were often left out. They could not go to school, get jobs, or use public places like others. This was unfair and made life harder for them. The purpose of this law is to eliminate disability discrimination in programs and entities that receive federal funds. The law passed. The law was passed in the 1973, making a historical movement, like a historical situation, and people receive equity and accessibility thanks to this law. Types of institutions covered by Section 504. Public and private institutions are covered by, for this law that receive federal funds. This law is applicable in local, state, and federal levels. Examples of that Section 504 covers, an institution that Section 504 covers is like a university, any schools, hospitals, government office that receive government funds, and they need to receive the same trade as others in any of these institutions. And this section covers these all institutions, but it's public and private, but it's local, state and federal levels. What is the Rehabilitation Act? Well, the Rehabilitation Act, like a landmark civil rights legislation passed in the 1973, like I said, I meant that eliminate discrimination against individuals with disabilities. That is means this law, when this law passed, this law protect people with disabilities. For me, I understand this law was a big evolution for that people thinking. First federal law to protect rights of people with disabilities in programs receiving federal financial assistance. What it means? Like, for example, in this time, a student that receive financial aid assistance or any other federal assistance, but many of the people with disabilities here inside the United States receive funds, federal funds for help themselves in any situations. They need to receive inclusion, in this case, in any institution, in any job, in any place here in the United States. No discrimination. This law protects any kind of discrimination against these people with disabilities. Like for me, this law is very important because I am very empathy with people with different backgrounds, like in different situations, like with uh, different development, different thinking, like a different like a different who is different because nobody is same. Like we we have many difference, and we need to work together to create a big empathy between all of us. The main mission of this law is no discrimination in any program or activity that receiving federal and financial assistance. It's like, as I said, like for example, my experience, I know that people that looks different that than us, sometimes we can we can see them at the same manner than others. This is not good. You need to create an empathy uh, between us to collaborate together in not only in institutions, schools, college. That I think so that you need to create a like in any you need to create like a culture, a big culture, I don't know, it's a culture, it's a thinking, it's an idea, but you need to create this idea between us, no discrimination, everyone need to be treated in the same way. We all, for me, all of us, we are same. We we are with different thinking also, but we need to receive that same trait like in any institution. Promote inclusion. For example, I work in higher education institution, and I saw that here it's only maybe 10% less uh, people with disabilities work here. And I saw another institution there are no more inclusion for people with different background, with different for, in this case with disabilities. We need to create more inclusion, motivate people with disabilities, engage with them, believe in them, they have a more good ideas sometimes, maybe they need to a little push, need a little motivation, to be better in the future, to open doors for them in the future, for big companies to get jobs, in big companies, they can revolution, create a revolution in the world. I don't know what happened in the future, but you need to believe in people, in all people with disabilities and without disabilities. I need to create inclusion between us. Serves a foundational civil rights law for disability rights in the United States. In this case, for me, that I have experience here in higher education, I need more trainings to create more conscience, more thinking about how manage people with disabilities. Sometimes I believe that faculty and staff that work in higher education institution in another schools and works in another places, not only in schools, in this situation I explain in higher education institution, but we don't have training sometimes, and we need to create more thinking, how to treat people with disability. I don't know, sometimes we have that about people with disability, how can treat them, but we need to ask more about people with disabilities. And some higher education institutions have a center where students with disabilities, they help students with disabilities. We can go to visit the program and maybe ask more question about how can development or manage a time with students with disabilities. We need to create like a more training for staff and faculty, because in my experience, I I have saw like people uh, trade a student with disabilities like as a kids. They are not kids. They are students. They are same people. They are like they need to be part of the same, like in the same way, like be part of the college in the same way. If you trade in this manner, student without disability, you need to train a student with disabilities in like with the same respect, is my opinion, like in this case.
So some legal and ethical framework is it prohibits discrimination based on disability in federally funded programs, guarantees equal access to education, employment, and services, requires reasonable accommodations in educational and employment institutions. Some ethical and rights and responsibilities are equal opportunities, equitable access for all people regardless of disability, inclusions treating people with dignity and without discrimination, responsibility, providing necessary accommodations for full participation. So Section 504 is such a big legal aspect, especially in higher education, because if anything, if a student comes back and says, "Oh, my rights were not followed through because of my disability," the higher educational institutions could get in very big trouble because of it, and so that's why it's such a big legal thing in higher education that all students are really accommodated for. So here are some differences between Section 504 versus ADA. Section 504 is a broad protections for all individuals with disabilities in federally funded programs ensuring equal access. So that would be following under public institutions as well. ADA is the Americans with Disability Act. It extends protection to private sector employees and public institutions. So those are like two big differences. So Section 504 is mostly focusing on mostly for disabilities for students, and also, but as well, AD is the protection for like employees and the public institutions, just in case if a student comes back and said, oh, they do a lawsuit on the institution and said, well, they didn't follow ADA guidelines, or they didn't let me have this accommodation, but I'm able to have that accommodation. So those are the two main differences between both of them.
The impact on higher education, like for me, is like a personal development in Kayla and I. Personal development, economic impact, social mobility, research, and innovation. Why personal development? College helps students grow personal, professional, economic, any way. Because college prepare them for the future, to get knowledge, like to prepare for jobs, experience, like engage with more people, like develop themselves. Like I don't know, for me it's like to create, like to create more, more open environment, like to be like no more, no more people, more with different thinking, like with different values, maybe with different like possibilities, like with different like you need to empathy create empathy between us, not only with a student with disabilities. mm, they learn also college prepare to they learn new skill, build confidence, and become more independent. I know center with students with disabilities treat them like as adults, like as students, like to prepare them, to motivate them, to help them, like in any situation. I know that they I prepare, there are got trainings, like people like has enough experience with a student with disabilities, and prepare them for the future, to get a better jobs, maybe be a better professionals, like be a good professional, like sometimes be like a, no, I don't know, be a better persons, better students, better workers, better parents. I don't know. And become a more independent. This is good for them. Really is very good when they feel independent. Economic impact. People with college degrees usually get better jobs and earn more money. For example, in this case, a student with disabilities get a good job. They can help their parents uh, in more their families and parents in the economy, and they feel more independence, like more motivate to participate in other activities, like more motivate to create more more engagement with other people. Um, Social mobility. College gives students, especially from families with low incomes, a chance to improve their lives and move up in the society. Like social mobility, like I said, that they create motivation and they create more engagement with other people, and they know more people. They more independent, like more people support them, like they more like I don't know how to say, like they can work wherever they want. They can be whatever they want. They can do whatever they want. Is that's it. And research and innovation, and new ideas, invention, solution that help the world. It's only that can, like I said.
Institutional responsibilities under Section 504. Institutions must ensure equal access to educational programs, services, and activities for students with disabilities. Institutions must provide accommodations such as extra time, accessible materials, or assistive technology based on documentation needs. So the students, when they talk to somebody at their students with disabilities office or disability office, they have to provide documentation that they need accommodations for this or for that. Non-discrimination. Institutions must avoid discriminatory practices and ensure accessible communications, facilities, and assessments. Training. Faculty and staff must be trained on Section 504 rights and how to implement accommodations effectively, so that way the students are able to continue with their education.
Section 504 in higher education institution. College and institution in universities must provide reasonable accommodation to students who qualify for service. For example, Center for Students with Disability provide test time, note-taking assistance, accessible facilities for students with disabilities. In this case, institutions are required to have a 504 coordinator to oversee compliance and student support service. Accommodation are determined through an interactive process between the student and the institution disability office. For me, that means like what college and university must do. College must make sure a student with disability get the help that they need. For example, they may give extra time for tests. In the building, they need more like building sure the buildings are accessible for them, like for a student with disabilities. In this case, like sometimes take notes. In this case, like a system like for registration, like provide like some advisor, like this advisor is like really training for support a student with disabilities. In this case, like some people in financial aid is training to support a student with disabilities, like that's it, like to prepare people, faculty and staff to bring the better help to the student with disabilities. Support and coordination, like every school needs a person to make sure to follow the down support student with disabilities. This person helps students get and service they need. How accommodation are decided. When a student needs help, they talk with the disabilities in their school. Together, they decide the best way to support the student and make sure that they receive the equal opportunities. And and that's it. In my opinion, for this, the section 504 is only like support students that with the things that they need really needs like more time, take note taking, like building accessibility, like this. Like we need to be sure that people inside higher education institution has experience to manage people with disabilities, like has experience training, has staff faculty have training and they how manage students with disabilities, like provide a good customer service for them, like the receive a good customer service and they are will happy to engage with a school and institution and come to study in any situation, in any time, and receive the student with disability in any institution with open arms.
What institutions cannot do? Institutions cannot deny admission based solely on disabilities, cannot charge students for accommodations, and institutions cannot lower academic standards, but must ensure they have the access to meet them. So higher education institutions always have to make sure that they are not denying any student that has reasonable accommodations for any reason. They cannot, like how I said, charge the students for the accommodations. They can't charge them, oh, well, you have to pay $5 for you to use our screen readers, or you need to pay $10 for you to get a note taker. No higher education institution should do that. They always have to follow ADA or Section 504 plan. Eligibility under Section 504. Section 504 protects individuals with a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activity. Major life activities include learning, reading, concentrating, walking, and communicating. Students must self-identify and provide documentation to access accommodations. So in higher education, every higher education institution should have a disability office. The students can go there and provide documentation. It could be if they're transitioning. An example is if they're transitioning from high school to a higher education institution, they could show their 504 plan if they had one in high school, or an IEP letting them know these were the accommodations that they had in high school, and if they're available to use it there at the higher education institution. Qualified individuals in higher education. A qualified individual is someone who meets the essential academic and technical standards of the program, which is Section 504, with or without accommodations. Being a qualified individual does not mean students must perform at the same level as their peers, but they must be able to meet program requirements with the necessary report. It's always a good idea to make sure students have the right documentation when it comes to accommodations, what extra support do they need to be able for them to continue with their academic journey, and so that way they are not struggling as much, and that way they could just keep continuing on. Some examples of reasonable accommodations are, like how I said, extended test time, note-taking assistance. Usually a lot of higher educational institutions have a note-taking assistance program where students who are in the same class as with the students with disabilities are able to do note-taking for them, and I know some of them do get paid, or some they do get some sort of other help. Use of assistive technology, which could be like screen readers, if they need like a reading pen, if they have dyslexia, accessible classroom and facilities. So a lot of the classrooms, usually in higher education, they are ADA compliant and they have to be. Flexible attendance policies medically when medically necessary. So if a student is pregnant, they could actually register with the Students with Disabilities because it's considered a they need accommodation, so they're able to. So the importance of Section 504 in higher education: it supports equity, inclusion, and student success, helps institutions comply with legal and ethical obligations, empowers students to fully participate in academic life. That's what you want in higher education, to make sure that all students are really participating in their academic journey by them joining clubs, making sure that they're doing well in their classes, that they're getting all the help that they need for them to continue on with their education, if they're in a trade school, if they're in a 2-year institution, 4-year institution, or they just finished their 4-year and they're starting graduate school. So you want to make sure that whatever we do as higher education leaders empowers the students to continue and really participate in their academic life.